I figured out the exact moment my marriage changed. It was when Lydia told me to be a man and stop with all the boundaries nonsense. We used to respect each other's space. She understood when I needed time alone after a stressful day, but something shifted 6 months ago and that respect vanished. The argument about boundaries led to those 3 words that altered everything. She looked me straight in the eye and said it with such conviction, like she had finally diagnosed what was wrong with me all along. Before I dive into what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt like your boundaries were being dismissed as weakness. Trust me, you will want to see how I handled this when my wife told me to be a man. Lydia and I got married 3 years ago. We met at my old company where we both worked in marketing. She was brilliant at her job, creative and driven. I fell for her confidence and the way she could light up a room during presentations. Those early days felt perfect. We would grab coffee before work, discuss our projects over dinner, and spend weekends exploring the city together. She respected my need for quiet time. I am the kind of person who recharges alone, and Lydia got that. She never made me feel guilty about it. I had this habit of reading on Sunday evenings. Nothing fancy, just me a book and complete silence. Lydia would do her own thing, maybe watch a show or call her sister. We existed together but gave each other room to breathe. That balance made our relationship work. We shared our lives without suffocating each other. I thought we had built something solid, something that would last. Around 6 months ago, subtle changes started appearing. Little things at first. I was on an important call with a client sitting in my home office with the door closed. Lydia opened it without knocking and asked if I had seen her car keys. I held up a finger signaling I needed a minute, but she kept talking. After the call ended, I gently mentioned that I needed privacy during work calls. She laughed it off, said I was being too sensitive, that it was just a quick question. A week later, I was in a crucial online meeting with my team and our director. We were discussing quarterly targets and budget allocations. Lydia walked in behind me, visible on camera, and started talking about whether we should invite her parents over for the weekend. My colleagues could see and hear everything. I muted myself, quickly turned around, and whispered that I was in a meeting. She rolled her eyes and left. I felt my face burn with embarrassment as I unmuted and apologized to my team. These interruptions became frequent. I would be deep in concentration preparing a presentation or analyzing data, and Lydia would burst in with random questions or comments. When I brought it up, she acted like I was making a big deal out of nothing. She would say things like couples should not have walls between them, that my need for work boundaries seemed cold and distant. Then I started noticing something else. My phone would be on the kitchen counter, and I would catch Lydia scrolling through my messages. The first time I saw it, I asked what she was doing. She smiled and said she was just curious about who I was texting. When I explained that those were private conversations, some work-related and confidential, she responded with that line I would hear over and over. Husband and wife should not have secrets. What was I hiding? I tried explaining the difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy meant having space for your own thoughts and conversations. Secrecy meant deliberately hiding harmful things. I had nothing to hide, but I valued having some parts of my life that were just mine. She did not see it that way. To Lydia, any boundary I set felt like a rejection of her. The violations escalated. One evening, I walked into our bedroom and found Lydia sitting on the bed with my work laptop open. She was reading through my emails, scrolling through exchanges with my boss and colleagues. My stomach dropped. I asked her what she was doing, trying to keep my voice calm, even though anger was rising in my chest. She looked up casually and said she just wanted to understand my work better so she could support me. I explained that those emails contained confidential company information. Reading them without permission violated not just my privacy, but also my professional ethics. She closed the laptop slowly, her expression hardening. She asked if I was hiding something, if there was a reason I did not want her to know about my work. I felt trapped. Any explanation I gave would be twisted into evidence that I was being secretive. The phone calls started next. Lydia would call me 5 or 6 times during work hours about things that could easily wait. Did I prefer the blue pillows or the gray ones for the couch? What did I think about getting a different brand of coffee? Should we repaint the bathroom? Each call pulled me away from tasks that required focus. My colleagues started noticing. One of them joked that I was more popular than the CEO based on how often my phone rang. Then Lydia began showing up at my office unannounced. She would walk in with coffee or lunch, acting like a thoughtful wife, surprising her husband. But I could see the real reason in her eyes. She was checking on me, making sure I was where I said I would be, seeing who I talked to. My coworkers made comments. Some thought it was sweet. Others gave me sympathetic looks that said they understood something was off. I knew I needed to have a serious conversation with Lydia. I could not keep living like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, unable to have any space that was truly mine. One evening after dinner, I suggested we talk. I made tea for both of us, chose my words carefully in my head before speaking. We sat in the living room and I started explaining how I felt. I told Lydia that I needed boundaries in my work life, not because I was hiding anything, but because having professional privacy was important to me. I talked about healthy boundaries in marriage, how they actually strengthen relationships by allowing both people to maintain their sense of self. I kept my tone gentle, non-accusatory. I wanted her to understand, not feel attacked. Lydia's face changed as I spoke. Her eyebrows drew together, her mouth tightened into a thin line. When I finished, she sat back and crossed her arms. She asked if I had been reading some cheap psychology book. She said she did not understand why I needed boundaries with my own wife. Were we not supposed to be partners in everything? Was I saying I did not trust her? I tried to clarify. Boundaries were not about trust. They were about respect. Just like she would not want me reading her journal if she kept one. I needed some aspects of my work life to remain private. She stood up abruptly, shaking her head. She told me I was making everything complicated. We were married. Married people shared everything. I was creating problems where none existed. The next week proved her words wrong. Everything got worse. I had a meeting with a major client, one that could bring in significant revenue for our company. I needed to prepare thoroughly, reviewing all our previous interactions and tailoring my pitch perfectly. During the 2 hours before the meeting, Lydia called me 5 times. The first call was about curtains. She had found 2 options online and could not decide which color would look better in our living room. I politely said we could discuss it that evening. 15 minutes later, she called again. She had changed her mind and found a third option. What did I think? I reminded her I was preparing for an important client meeting. She asked if clients were more important than my wife. The frustration in her voice made me feel guilty, even though I knew I had done nothing wrong. I spent 10 minutes on the phone discussing curtains when I should have been reviewing my presentation. The remaining 3 calls followed the same pattern. By the time the client meeting started, I felt scattered and unprepared. The meeting did not go as well as I hoped. The client seemed interested but not convinced. I knew I could have done better if I had been able to focus. That same week, I received mail at home from my company. It was my annual performance review, sent in a sealed envelope, clearly marked confidential. When I got home from work, I found the envelope on the kitchen table already opened. Lydia was cooking dinner like nothing was unusual. I picked up the envelope and asked if she had opened my mail. She glanced over and said she thought it might be a shared bill or something important we both needed to know about. The envelope clearly had my name and the company logo. There was no way she could have confused it for a household bill. I felt violated. My performance review contained sensitive information about my salary, my strengths and weaknesses as evaluated by my supervisor, and my goals for the upcoming year. This was deeply personal professional information, and Lydia had opened it like it was junk mail. When I confronted her about it, she got defensive. She said I was overreacting. If I had nothing to hide in my performance review, why did it matter if she saw it? I tried explaining that some things were private, even between married couples. She threw the dish towel on the counter and walked out of the kitchen. The situation reached a new level of intrusion a few days later. I received a call from Lydia's mother. She asked me how the Wilson Project was going at work. I froze. The Wilson Project was confidential. We had not made any public announcements about it. I asked her how she knew about it. She sounded confused by my question. Lydia had told her all about it, including the budget figures and timeline. I felt sick. Lydia had not only been reading my emails, but had been sharing confidential work information with her mother. When I got home that evening, I asked Lydia about it calmly. She said she did not see what the big deal was. She talked to her mother about everything. Was she supposed to pretend her husband did not have a job? I explained that some work information was confidential. Sharing it with anyone, even family, could get me fired. She laughed and said I was being dramatic. Her mother was not going to tell anyone. I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But it was not about whether her mother would tell anyone. It was about Lydia accessing information that was not hers to share and then distributing it without any consideration for the consequences I might face. That night, I changed all my passwords. Work laptop, personal laptop, phone, email accounts, everything. I made them complex combinations that Lydia would not be able to guess. I hated doing it. It felt like barricading myself in my own home, but I needed some control over my own information. Lydia noticed within a day. She tried to check something on my laptop and found she could not log in. She came to me holding the laptop, her face tight with anger. She demanded to know why I had changed the password. What was I trying to hide from her? Why was I suddenly so secretive? I stayed calm and explained that I needed these boundaries. My work information had to remain confidential. I was not hiding anything bad. I just needed professional privacy. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. She said I did not trust her. Our marriage was falling apart because I cared more about passwords than about our relationship. She made me feel like the villain for wanting basic privacy. A few weeks later, everything came to a head. It was a Friday afternoon and I had left work early. I walked into our house and found Lydia sitting at the dining table with my work laptop open in front of her. Somehow she had figured out my new password. She was reading emails between me and a headhunter. I had started exploring new job opportunities. My current workplace had become toxic. My boss micromanaged everything, the company culture was deteriorating, and I felt undervalued despite consistently exceeding my targets. I had reached out to a recruiter to see what else was out there. I had not made any decisions. I was just gathering information. Lydia looked up when I walked in. She did not seem embarrassed about being caught. She asked why I had not told her I was looking for a new job. Her tone was accusatory, like I had betrayed her. I stood there, briefcase still in my hand, trying to process what was happening. I asked her what she was doing with my work laptop. She ignored my question and repeated hers. Why was I job hunting without telling her? Was I planning to just quit one day and surprise her? I felt my carefully maintained calm start to crack. I asked her again how she had gotten into my laptop. She waved her hand dismissively. That was not important. What was important was that I was keeping major life decisions from her. The argument that followed was like a dam breaking. I told her she had no right to access my laptop. She countered that I had no right to make career decisions without consulting her. I pointed out that I had not made any decisions. I was exploring options. She said exploring without telling her was the same as lying. I asked her how I was supposed to trust her with information when she consistently invaded my privacy. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She said that privacy in a marriage was just another word for secrets. Real couples did not need privacy. They shared everything. I reminded her of all the times I had asked for boundaries, all the times she had violated them. Reading my emails, opening my mail, sharing confidential information, showing up at my office unannounced, checking my phone. I asked her when it would stop. Lydia stepped closer to me, her face flushed with anger. She said my problem was that I was too weak. I kept complaining about boundaries like a child who could not handle real intimacy. A real man did not need all these walls and barriers. A real man shared everything with his wife without hesitation. I felt like I had been slapped. I asked her to repeat what she had just said. She did not back down. She told me I was weak. A real man would not be so sensitive about his space. A real man would welcome his wife into every aspect of his life. I was creating distance where there should be closeness. I tried one more time to explain that healthy boundaries did not equal weakness. They were a sign of self-respect and mutual respect in a relationship. But Lydia was not listening. She moved even closer, pointing her finger at my chest. Be a man, Beau. Stop with all this boundaries nonsense. Be a man and stop acting like you need your own space away from your wife. The words hung in the air between us. Something shifted inside me in that moment. I looked at Lydia, really looked at her, and realized she would never understand. She would never respect my need for personal space. In her mind, my boundaries were flaws that needed to be fixed, not legitimate needs that deserved recognition. Lydia continued talking, saying she was tired of my oversensitivity. I needed to grow up and act like an adult in a marriage. But I barely heard her. My mind was working through the implications of what she had just said. She wanted me to be a man. She wanted me to stop setting boundaries. Fine. I would do exactly that, just not in the way she expected. I looked at her and said one word. Okay. She stopped mid-sentence, surprised. She asked what okay meant. I repeated it. Okay, she wanted me to be a man. I would be a man. She looked confused, like she had expected more of a fight. I turned and walked to the bedroom, leaving her standing in the dining room. I sat on the edge of our bed thinking. Lydia wanted me to be a man and stop setting boundaries. I would do exactly that, but on my terms. A real man did not need to explain himself. A real man made decisions and took responsibility for them. A real man did not require anyone's approval to live his life. If Lydia wanted me to stop asking for boundaries, I would stop. But I would also stop involving her in my decisions. She had shown me repeatedly that she did not respect my privacy or my autonomy. She wanted access to everything, but she did not want to honor the trust that required. So I would give her what she asked for. No more boundaries, because there would be nothing left to protect with boundaries. I would simply stop sharing. The plan formed clearly in my mind. I would make my own decisions about my career, my life, my future. I would not ask for Lydia's input because asking implied I needed her permission. A man, a real man in the traditional sense Lydia seemed to want, did not ask. He decided and moved forward. 2 days after our fight, my phone rang. The headhunter I had been talking with had good news. A company in Colorado wanted to interview me for a senior marketing manager position. The role offered 30% more than my current salary, better benefits, and real opportunities for advancement. The company was growing innovative and valued their employees. It sounded perfect. There was one significant detail. The job was in Denver, over 1,000 miles from where Lydia and I currently lived. Normally, this would be a decision we made together. Moving to a different state affected both of us. We would need to discuss her job, our life here, whether the opportunity was worth the upheaval. I would have sat down with Lydia and laid out all the pros and cons, asked for her thoughts, made the choice as a team. But I remembered her words. Be a man. Stop with the boundaries. She wanted me to stop asking, stop explaining, stop creating what she saw as unnecessary complications. So I would not ask. I scheduled the video interview for the following week. I took the call from a coffee shop during my lunch break. I did not mention it to Lydia. The interview went well. The hiring manager liked my experience and vision. They appreciated my strategic thinking and how I handled their hypothetical scenarios. At the end of the call, they invited me to Denver for a final round of interviews with their leadership team. I booked a flight for the following week. I told Lydia I had a work trip, a conference that had come up suddenly. She barely looked up from her phone when I mentioned it. She just nodded and asked when I would be back. No questions about where or why. She seemed satisfied that I was not overcomplicating things with details. I flew to Denver on a Tuesday morning. The city stretched out below the plane as we descended the Rocky Mountains, rising dramatically in the distance. The interviews lasted most of the day. I met with the chief marketing officer, the CEO, and several team members I would work with directly. Every conversation reinforced that this was a place where I could thrive. They valued innovation and respected their people. Nobody would be reading my emails or questioning my need for professional privacy. After the formal interviews, the HR manager gave me a tour of the office and the surrounding area. The building was modern, filled with natural light. The team seemed genuinely happy to be there. People were collaborative without being intrusive. I felt something I had not felt in months. Hope. The possibility of a fresh start where my boundaries would not be seen as character flaws. At the end of the day, the HR manager walked me to a conference room. She sat down across from me and smiled. They wanted to offer me the position. The salary was even higher than initially discussed. They would provide relocation assistance, help finding housing, everything I needed to make the move smooth. She slid a folder across the table with all the details. She asked if I needed time to think about it. I looked at the offer letter, at the numbers that represented not just more money, but validation of my worth. I thought about Lydia at home, probably checking my laptop again, going through my things, convinced that her invasive behavior was normal, and my resistance was the problem. I told the HR manager I needed 3 days to consider the offer. On the flight home, I went through everything in my mind. This was a massive decision. moving states, starting over, leaving behind the life Lydia and I had built. Normally, this would require long discussions, careful planning, mutual agreement. But I kept coming back to what had happened. Lydia consistently violated my privacy. She dismissed my boundaries as weakness. She told me to be a man and stop asking for space. She wanted me to make decisions without her input. I would do exactly that. I also thought about what would happen if I told Lydia about the offer. She would say no, not because the job was not good or because Denver was not nice. She would say no because she wanted control. She would turn it into another argument about boundaries, about how I was creating problems, about how I was not being a team player in our marriage. The irony was not lost on me. She had spent months invading every corner of my life, and now I was supposed to give her veto power over my future. I made my decision somewhere over Kansas. I would accept the job. A man took control of his own future. A man made decisions that were best for him and lived with the consequences. Lydia had told me repeatedly what kind of man she wanted. I would show her. When we landed, I turned my phone back on and called the HR manager. I accepted the offer. She sounded thrilled. We worked out the details. I would start in 6 weeks. The company would arrange for movers, help me find an apartment, handle all the logistics. I signed the digital contract that night on my personal email account, the one Lydia did not know existed. The next 6 weeks were surreal. I went through the motions of normal life. I submitted my resignation at my current company, giving them the standard 2 weeks notice. My boss was disappointed but understanding. My colleagues threw me a small going-away party. Through all of it, I said nothing to Lydia. She asked how the work trip had been. I said it was fine. She did not ask for details, and I did not offer any. She seemed pleased that I was not overcomplicating our conversations anymore. She probably thought her tough love approach had finally worked, that I had stopped being so sensitive and difficult. I began making arrangements quietly. I found a one-bedroom apartment in Denver through virtual tours. I set up utilities, changed my address with the post office, organized everything needed for the move. I did it all through my personal email and phone during work hours or when Lydia was out. I deleted every trace of communication with the new company from devices she could access. Lydia still occasionally checked my phone or laptop. But she found nothing because there was nothing to find. I had become exactly what she asked for. A man who did not set boundaries because a man who shares nothing needs no boundaries to protect what he shares. I packed my belongings slowly, carefully. Things that were solely mine went into boxes in the garage. I told Lydia I was organizing and donating stuff we did not need. She liked that idea, said it was good to declutter. She had no idea I was preparing to leave. My last day at work arrived. My replacement had been hired and trained. I cleaned out my desk, said my final goodbyes, and drove home for the last time as a resident of that city. Lydia was at her office. I loaded my car with the boxes from the garage, the essentials I needed immediately. The moving company would handle the rest the following week. 2 weeks before my start date in Denver, I could not delay telling Lydia any longer. I needed to be transparent about the practical realities, even if I had made the decision without her. I found her in the kitchen one evening, scrolling through her phone. I asked if we could talk. She looked up, slightly annoyed at being interrupted. I told her I had accepted a new job. She blinked, processing the words. She asked, were her tone curious but not concerned. I said Denver. She laughed, thinking I was joking. When I did not laugh with her, her smile faded. She asked if I was serious. I nodded. I started in 2 weeks. The silence that followed felt heavy. Lydia put her phone down slowly, her face shifting from confusion to shock to anger in rapid succession. She asked why I had not told her. I explained calmly that I had accepted a position as senior marketing manager at a tech company in Colorado. The pay was significantly better. The role offered real growth opportunities. I would be moving the following week. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. She demanded to know when I had decided this. I told her I interviewed several weeks ago and accepted the offer shortly after. She stared at me like I had become a stranger. She asked how I could make such a huge decision without talking to her. This was not just my life. It was our life. We were married. I should have discussed it with her. I looked at her directly and said she had told me to be a man and stop with the boundaries. I had done exactly what she asked. A man made decisions about his own future without needing permission. She had made it clear that my need to discuss things, to set boundaries, to ask for input was weakness. So I had stopped asking. Lydia's face turned red. She said this was completely different. This was marriage. Major decisions required discussion. I asked if she meant the kind of discussion we had when she read my private emails, or when she opened my confidential mail, or when she shared my work information with her mother, or when she showed up at my office without warning, or when she told me my boundaries were weakness and I needed to be a man. She had no response. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I continued speaking, my voice steady. I told her I had spent months asking her to respect my privacy. She had refused every single time. She made me feel weak for wanting basic boundaries. She told me to stop complicating things and just be a man. So I became the kind of man who did not ask for permission or approval. I made my own decisions and took responsibility for them. Lydia started crying. She said I was being cruel. I was punishing her by leaving. This was not what she meant when she told me to be a man. I asked what she thought it meant. Did she think being a man meant having no boundaries but still giving her control over every aspect of my life? That was not strength. That was submission. She asked if I even wanted to save our marriage. I told her honestly that I did not know. What I knew was that I could not continue living in a relationship where my basic need for privacy was treated as a character defect. I had tried communicating. I had tried explaining. I had tried setting gentle boundaries. Nothing worked. She escalated her invasions and blamed me for being too sensitive. Lydia said she would change. She would respect my boundaries if I stayed. But I had heard promises like that before, usually right before things went back to how they were. I told her I was moving to Denver. If she wanted to work on our marriage, we could try counseling remotely. But I was done living under constant surveillance and being told my need for respect was weakness. The next week was tense. Lydia went from begging me to stay to being furiously angry to silent treatment. I packed the rest of my things. The movers came and loaded everything into their truck. Lydia watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, tears streaming down her face. Part of me felt guilty, but a larger part felt free for the first time in months. I drove to Denver with my car packed full of immediate necessities. The mountain views were stunning. I felt lighter with every mile I put between myself and that house. I was not running away. I was running toward something better. A life where I did not have to justify my need for privacy. A job where my work was valued. A future where boundaries were not seen as barriers but as healthy markers of self-respect. My apartment in Denver was small but perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out at the mountains. The space was mine alone. Nobody would go through my things or read my emails. I could close my door and know it would stay closed until I opened it. That simple privacy felt like luxury after months of invasion. Starting the new job was refreshing. My colleagues were professional and friendly without being intrusive. My manager trusted me to do my work without micromanaging. The company culture valued independence and initiative. I threw myself into my projects, grateful to be somewhere my competence was recognized and my boundaries were automatically respected. I made new friends slowly. People I met through work at the gym, at coffee shops. They were good people who understood that healthy relationships, whether friendships or romantic, required respecting each other's space. I told a few of them about my situation. They were supportive without being judgmental. Several had their own stories about relationships where boundaries were not honored. Lydia and I tried counseling for a few months. We did video sessions with a therapist who specialized in couples communication. The therapist validated what I had been saying all along. Boundaries were healthy. Privacy was not secrecy. Lydia's behavior had been invasive and controlling. Lydia heard the words but did not really accept them. She kept trying to justify her actions or minimize how they had affected me. Eventually, we both acknowledged what we already knew. Our marriage was over. We filed for divorce. It was sad but also felt inevitable. We had wanted different things. She wanted complete access and control. I wanted partnership with mutual respect. Those two visions could not coexist. Sitting in my apartment now looking out at the Rocky Mountains, I think about what I learned. Being a man does not mean abandoning boundaries. Real strength is not about eliminating your needs to make someone else comfortable. It is about respecting yourself enough to require respect from others. Lydia thought boundaries made me weak. She was wrong. Setting and maintaining boundaries, even when someone you love tells you they make you less of a man, takes tremendous strength. Walking away from a relationship where your basic needs are dismissed as flaws takes courage. Starting over in a new city, building a new life, facing uncertainty alone, that is not weakness. That is the truest kind of strength. I learned that you cannot have a healthy relationship with someone who sees your self-respect as a threat. When someone tells you that needing privacy means you do not love them, they are confusing love with control. Real love honors boundaries. Real partnership involves two whole people choosing to share their lives while maintaining their individual identities. I also learned that sometimes people tell you exactly what they think of you, and you need to believe them. When Lydia called me weak for wanting boundaries, she showed me how she truly saw me. When she told me to be a man and stop asking for respect, she revealed that she did not think I deserved respect. I am grateful I finally listened to what she was really saying. Denver has been good to me. I have grown in my career. I have built friendships based on mutual respect. I have learned to trust my instincts about what I need and not apologize for those needs. I have learned that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel bad for having basic standards. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had told Lydia about the job offer from the beginning. Would she have supported the move? Would we have worked through our issues? But I know the answer. She would have said no. She would have made it about control, about me not considering her, about boundaries again. The outcome would have been the same, just delayed. When people ask me about my marriage ending, I tell them the truth. My wife told me to be a man, so I did. I made decisions that were right for my life. I took control of my future. I stopped asking permission to have basic privacy and respect. That is what being a man really means. Not eliminating boundaries, but having the strength to maintain them, even when others call you weak for doing so. I hope Lydia finds what she is looking for. I hope she learns that true intimacy comes from two people choosing to be vulnerable with each other, not from one person forcing access to every corner of the other's life. But that is not my journey anymore. My journey is here in this city, in this life I have built on my own terms. Have you ever been in a relationship where your boundaries were dismissed? Drop a comment below and share your experience. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real stories about navigating difficult relationships and finding your strength. Share this with someone who might need to hear that wanting respect does not make them weak. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you recognize your own worth and the importance of standing firm in what you deserve. May you find the courage to honor your own boundaries, and may you surround yourself with people who respect them without being asked.